November 1914, Ploegsteert Wood, Belgian Flanders. 8 German soldiers blacken their faces with burnt cork. They strip the metal buttons from their tunics and wrap them in cloth. Each man carries either a sharpened entrenching tool, a length of lead pipe, or a Luger pistol. No rifles. Their objective lies 40 metres beyond the British wire, a listening post manned by 3 men. Orders are to take 1 prisoner. If that fails, kill everyone and bring back identification. They move in single file through freezing mud, each man keeping one hand on the boot of the soldier ahead. Communication is by touch only. The journey takes 90 minutes to cover 200 metres, and this is one of the earliest documented night raids of the war. Within 18 months, such operations will become institutionalised doctrine. By 1917, some British divisions will conduct them weekly, regardless of tactical necessity, to maintain what commanders call the offensive spirit. December 1914, the Ypres salient. German patrols begin systematic reconnaissance of British positions. Small parties of 2 to 4 men crawl forward nightly to observe wire placement, trench layout, and garrison routines. They carry notebooks wrapped in oilcloth. They sketch what they see and report to intelligence officers who compile the information into detailed maps. The British respond in kind. The patrols begin encountering each other in no man's land. Men armed with pistols and knives fight silent engagements in shell holes and behind wire pickets. The winners return with information. The losers do not return at all. January 1915, near Givenchy. A party of British soldiers attempts to enter German trenches for the first time in the war. The approach succeeds. The raiders reach the German parapet and drop into the trench. Fighting breaks out immediately. The raiders kill 3 Germans with pistol fire and grenades before withdrawing. They bring back a German cap badge and a paybook. Intelligence officers identify the opposing unit. The static front created this form of warfare. When continuous trench lines stretched from Switzerland to the Channel after autumn 1914, conventional manoeuvre ended. Armies faced each other across distances measured in dozens of metres. No man's land varied from 25 metres in cramped sectors to over a kilometre in others. Daylight movement invited immediate machine gun fire. Darkness offered the only opportunity for close reconnaissance, prisoner capture, and direct assault. Intelligence drove the earliest raids. Commanders needed to identify which enemy units held opposing sectors. A tired division recently withdrawn from heavy fighting suggested different possibilities than a fresh formation brought from reserve. The only reliable method for obtaining this information was to capture prisoners or retrieve documents from enemy dead. Both tasks required entering the enemy trench system. Psychological warfare provided additional justification. The constant threat of nocturnal incursion kept enemy garrisons anxious. Men who spent nights straining to hear approaching raiders could not rest effectively even in rear areas. British commanders embraced this reasoning, arguing that aggressive raiding demonstrated moral superiority. The Germans formalised trench raiding doctrine first. By early 1915, German units had begun organising Stoßtruppen, shock troops trained specifically for trench assault. These storm detachments emphasized speed, violence, and preparation. March 1915, Hartmannswillerkopf, Alsace. Captain Willy Rohr commands a detachment testing close combat techniques in the Vosges Mountains. His men practice with hand grenades, pistols, and sharpened entrenching tools. They develop signals for coordination in trench fighting. They rehearse on captured French positions. Rohr's methods spread through the German army. By autumn 1915, storm detachments exist in multiple sectors. Training emphasizes initiative at the lowest levels. Small groups learn to operate independently, exploiting opportunities without waiting for orders. German raiding parties assembled in saps pushed forward into no man's land. The final approach to enemy wire might be prepared days in advance. Gaps cut secretly at night and concealed from observation. Timing coordinated with artillery. A brief, intense bombardment struck the targeted trench section. The guns lifted to box in the objective area. Raiders assaulted immediately behind the lifting fire, reaching enemy trenches while defenders still sheltered from shells. German raiders carried multiple stick grenades, the wooden-handled steel hand granaten that could be thrown up to 40 metres compared to 25 for the British Mills bomb. They carried Luger pistols for close-range work. Many carried sharpened entrenching tools, brutally effective in dugout fighting. Some units issued purpose-built trench clubs weighted with lead or studded with nails. February 1915, Neuve-Chapelle. A party from an Indian Army battalion attempts to penetrate German trenches after brief artillery preparation. The raid achieves partial success. Several Germans killed, some identification gathered, but withdrawal proves costly. German machine guns sweep no man's land. Casualties mount before the survivors reach their own wire. The action illustrates both the potential value and the extreme hazards of raiding. Communication between raiding parties and supporting elements emerges as a recurring problem. Once men enter no man's land, they pass beyond effective control. Commanders can neither see their progress nor direct their actions. Raids that proceed according to plan succeed brilliantly. Raids that encounter unexpected obstacles devolve into confusion. By mid-1915, British raiding acquires standardized procedures. GHQ issues instructions specifying composition of raiding parties, equipment to be carried, signals to be employed. The standardization brings improvements, but it also creates predictability. German defenders learn to expect certain patterns. The Canadians prove particularly innovative. Canadian units arrive in France in early 1915 with aggressive spirit but little experience of European warfare. They learn quickly. November 1915, Petit-Duvy-Messines sector. Approximately 60 Canadians attack German trenches. The raiders achieve complete surprise, entering the German position undetected until they are already in the trench. Hand-to-hand fighting follows. A dozen Germans killed or captured, a machine gun position destroyed. This raid establishes the Canadians' reputation as effective and aggressive raiders. French forces develop their own traditions under the designation coups de main. French doctrine emphasizes small, mobile parties operating with minimal support, relying on stealth rather than firepower. French raiders often operate in teams of 6 to 12 men. They favor approaches over several nights, with scouts mapping routes and identifying positions before the assault party commits. Selection of men for raiding parties follows patterns across all armies. Youth counts for little. Steadiness and experience matter more. Physical fitness is essential, not merely for crossing no man's land, but for the sustained physical combat that close quarters fighting requires. A raid might last only minutes. Those minutes demand explosive exertion. Psychological suitability proves harder to assess. Raiding requires men who function effectively under extreme stress, who make instant decisions in darkness amid chaos, who do not freeze at the critical moment. Some men who perform well in conventional trench warfare prove unsuitable for raids. Others who seem unpromising in routine duties discover unsuspected aptitudes. Training grows increasingly sophisticated. By 1916, dedicated training areas behind the lines allow raiders to practice on mock trenches constructed to match enemy positions. Men rehearse specific roles until movements become automatic. The assault party knows which dugout entrances to attack, which traverses to clear, which communication trenches to block. The mock trenches replicate known features of the objective. Intelligence officers study aerial photographs and patrol reports to ensure accuracy. Raiders walk the course repeatedly in daylight, then at dusk, then in darkness. The rehearsals continue until the sequence becomes reflexive. Equipment preparation occupies enormous attention. Every piece of metal that might reflect light or create noise must be secured or removed. Identification discs are removed or taped. Bayonets are blackened. Buttons are wrapped or replaced with ties. Grenades are inspected to ensure fuses function. Wire cutters are sharpened and tested. A British raider in late 1916 typically carries 4 to 6 mils bombs, a pistol or rifle with fixed bayonet, wire cutters or a trench knife, a length of rope for binding prisoners, a field dressing, and identification in case of death or capture. Total weight approaches 30 pounds. Faces and hands are darkened. Burnt cork, soot, mud, and purpose-made face paint all serve. Helmets are covered with cloth or exchanged for woolen caps. The darkening process requires care. Miss a spot. A white hand, an exposed collar, and moonlight betrays the raider. Standard infantry rifles prove awkward in trench confines. Distances might be measured in feet rather than yards. Pistols offer better maneuverability but limited ammunition. The Webley revolver carries 6 rounds, the Luger holds 8. In a close fight, empty chambers mean death. Grenades become the primary weapon. British raiders typically carry 4 to 6 mils bombs each. Designated bombers carry up to 12. The grenades are primed before departure. Pulling the pin and releasing the lever starts a 4-second fuse. In trench fighting, 4 seconds is a long time. Close combat weapons assume disproportionate importance. Trench clubs kill silently and never jam. They crush skulls and break bones. Knuckle knives combine brass knuckles with a short blade. Sharpened entrenching tools serve as combination axe and shovel. A lateral swing to the neck severs arteries. A downward chop splits the skull. These weapons reflect the intimate brutality of trench raiding, killing quickly and quietly at arm's length. Men who use them remember the sensation, the resistance of flesh and bone, the sounds the dying make, the warmth of blood on hands and face. The experience begins hours before assault. Raiders assemble in forward trenches as darkness falls. They check equipment and wait in silence. The tension weighs heavily. Some write final letters, some pray, many simply wait, conserving energy. The waiting is worse than the action. Men know what is coming. Stomachs knot, bladders demand release, hands shake despite best efforts. A sergeant of the Royal Welch Fusiliers describes the feeling. Your mouth goes dry and stays dry. You keep swallowing, but there's nothing to swallow. You want to piss, but you've pissed 3 times already. Then 0 hour comes and it all goes away. You just do it. At the designated hour, raiders move into no man's land. The passage over the parapet requires care. Once in no man's land, the party forms assault formation and begins the slow approach. Movement across no man's land demands extreme patience. The temptation to move quickly must be resisted. Speed creates noise. Raiders move in short rushes, freezing motionless when flares burst overhead, pressing into the earth until artificial light fades. A journey of a few hundred meters might take an hour. The flares are a particular terror. Star shells burst overhead with a pop and descend slowly beneath parachutes, casting harsh white light that throws black shadows. Men caught in the open freeze becoming part of the landscape. Any movement draws fire. The light seems to last forever, in reality 20 to 30 seconds. Then darkness returns deeper than before and the eyes must readjust. Experienced raiders learn to close one eye when flares rise, preserving night vision in the closed eye. They learn to move during the descent of a dying flare, when light is fading and attention wandering. The ground of no man's land is treacherous. Shell craters fill with water that can drown a man who falls in. The lips of craters crumble underfoot. Unexploded shells lie buried in soft earth, their fuses still live. Barbed wire, cut in previous actions, lies in tangled coils that snare the unwary. Wire presents particular challenges. Enemy entanglements might extend dozens of meters in depth, comprising multiple belts at varying heights. Artillery bombardment intended to cut wire proves unreliable. Shells landing short or long miss entirely. Accurate shells throw wire into tangled confusion. Many commanders prefer silent cutting, accepting additional time and risk for preservation of surprise. Wire cutting is delicate, terrifying work. The man with cutters advances alone or with a single companion, moving by feel while trying to sever strands without noise. Wire springs back with a distinctive singing sound if improperly cut. Stakes creak, equipment snags. The cutter knows enemy sentries might be watching, machine guns might open fire. His position leaves him completely exposed. The technique requires systematic work. Cut low on the strand near the stake to minimize spring back. Hold the cut end to prevent it swinging. Clear a path wide enough for men to pass without brushing wire on either side. The work might take 30 minutes for a 10-meter gap. Reaching the enemy parapet marks transition from approach to assault. Raiders assemble in dead ground immediately before the trench. The assault must be sudden and violent, exploiting seconds of confusion before defenders organize. At the signal, the first men go over the enemy parapet, dropping into trenches where Germans might be sleeping, standing sentry, or gathering for their own patrols. The drop into an enemy trench is a moment of extreme vulnerability. The raider is silhouetted against the sky. His eyes have not adjusted to the deeper darkness of the trench. He lands among men who may be alert and armed. The first seconds determine whether he lives or dies. Experienced raiders drop low, rolling as they land, coming up with weapon ready. They throw grenades into the nearest dugout entrance before defenders can emerge. They shoot or club anyone in reach. Speed and violence of action override everything else. What follows is the most intense combat of the war. Trench fighting at night combines close-quarters battle with darkness and surprise. Men fight at arm's length with grenades, pistols, clubs, and knives. Grenades thump and roar in confined dugout spaces. Men shout, scream, and die in languages their killers cannot understand. The smell is blood and explosive and the particular musty stench of occupied trenches. A German Stoßtrupp veteran recalls, "In the trench you fight like animals. There is no time to think. You strike and keep striking until nothing moves. Only afterward do you see what you have done." The raiders' task is not to hold ground, but to achieve objectives and withdraw. Assault parties push into the targeted section, clearing dugouts with grenades, engaging defenders who emerge. Blocking parties secure flanks, taking positions at junctions to prevent reinforcement. Prisoner handlers grab Germans who can be taken alive. The entire action must complete within minutes, before German artillery ranges on the compromised section. The timing is critical. Commanders set rigid limits. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, rarely more. German artillery needs only minutes to lay fire on the compromised trench. German reserves need only minutes to mount counterattacks. Stay too long and the raid becomes a disaster. Withdrawal is often the most dangerous phase. The attacking party must disengage while maintaining cohesion, carrying wounded and prisoners across no man's land under far more hazardous conditions than the approach. The enemy is now fully alerted. Flares illuminate the ground. Machine guns sweep likely routes. Artillery fire begins to fall. The machine guns are the greatest threat. German gunners train their weapons on the approaches to their own wire, knowing raiders must pass through predictable zones. When flares reveal movement, the guns open fire. Men caught in the beaten zone have seconds to reach cover or die. A British officer describes withdrawal. "The first shells landed as we reached our own wire. We threw ourselves flat and crawled the last 50 yards. Men were hit all around me. I could hear them calling, but there was nothing to be done. We got into the trench and counted heads. Half the party was missing. Raiders separated from their party faced terrible choices. No man's land in daylight offers no concealment. A man caught in the open at dawn can only seek shelter in a shell hole and wait for nightfall, spending the day under observation and periodic fire, suffering thirst and wounds and psychological torment. Some are recovered the next night, others are not. Prisoners present complications. A prisoner is valuable only if delivered alive to intelligence officers. Taking prisoners during a raid means dividing attention between fighting and handling captives. Germans who resist capture or seem likely to resist are often killed rather than taken. This is not cruelty but tactical calculation. A raiding party fighting for survival cannot struggle with uncooperative prisoners under fire. The decision to kill rather than capture happens in seconds. A German emerges from a dugout with hands raised. Is he surrendering or reaching for a grenade? A German lies wounded. Can he walk or must he be carried? The raider makes instant judgments with life or death consequences. Treatment of captured raiders varies. Some are taken prisoner according to the laws of war. Others are killed during or immediately after. Capture, particularly when fighting has been bitter. The Geneva Conventions offer theoretical protection. Enforcement is impossible in trench warfare chaos. 9th of July 1916, near Fromelles. A party from an Australian battalion attempts to penetrate German trenches following brief bombardment. Artillery has failed to cut the wire adequately. Raiders become entangled while German machine guns open fire from prepared positions. The assault collapses into massacre. Of approximately 150 men who leave the trenches, fewer than 50 return. German casualties, minimal. The Fromelles raid exemplifies everything that can go wrong. Artillery preparation inadequate, wire uncut, defenders alert and prepared. No possibility of surprise. Most who die never reach the German wire. German raids prove equally devastating when conditions favour defenders. British units detect approaching raiders through alert sentry work, or the chance noise of wire cutting. Machine guns and rifles concentrate on the assault before it reaches the parapet. June 1916, near Beaumont-Hamel, German Stoßtruppen attempt a raid on British trenches held by the 29th Division. A sentry hears wire cutting and alerts the garrison. Machine guns open fire as the raiders approach the parapet. 23 Germans die in no man's land. 7 are captured. The British suffer 3 wounded. The disparity in casualties reflects the defenders' advantage. Only surprise, carefully achieved and ruthlessly exploited, allows raiders to succeed at acceptable cost. Despite the costs, raiding continues and intensifies through the middle years. Commanders who initially authorized raids for intelligence increasingly demand them as demonstrations of aggressiveness. British raids alone number in the thousands over the course of the war. Some divisions develop cultures that prize raiding, conducting operations on regular schedules and competing with neighbouring units for total enemy killed and prisoners taken. Some officers resist. They point to casualty ratios that frequently favour defenders. They question the intelligence value of prisoners taken at such cost. Their objections are overruled. The offensive spirit must be maintained. Raiding doctrine evolves. Early raids are improvised affairs, planned and executed within days. By 1917, major raids involve weeks of preparation. Scale increases. What begins as patrols of a dozen men grows into battalion-strength assaults. January 1917, near Arras. The 4th Canadian Division conducts a raid involving over 800 men against German positions on Vimy Ridge. The operation requires 3 weeks of preparation. Rehearsals take place on a full-scale replica of the objective. Artillery fires a precise creeping barrage. The raiders achieve all objectives, capturing 36 prisoners and destroying multiple dugouts. Casualties: 51 killed and wounded. April 14th, 1917. Monchy-le-Preux. Approximately 200 men from the 10th Battalion Royal Fusiliers attack German trenches. Complete surprise achieved. Hand-to-hand fighting through several hundred metres of trench. Multiple dugouts destroyed. 40 Germans killed. 23 prisoners captured, including 2 officers. Cost: 67 casualties, 19 killed outright. Several more die later of wounds. Whether such exchanges represent rational military calculation remains contested throughout the war. Advocates point to intelligence gathered, prisoners taken, damage inflicted. Critics note disproportionate casualties, limited tactical results, strain on units conducting frequent operations, and Germans respond to Allied raiding with improved defences. Listening posts pushed forward provide early warning. Wire obstacles grow deeper and more complex. Sentry positions are reinforced. Fields of fire coordinated. These measures increase hazards without eliminating the practice. November 2-3, 1917, near Battlement-Lorraine sector. Approximately 60 men from the American 16th Infantry Regiment attempt to penetrate German trenches, following artillery preparation. Initial surprise achieved. The raid enters the German position. Fighting in the trenches becomes disorganized. Withdrawal proves costly. Prisoners taken by the Germans include Corporal Nick Neche, reportedly the first American prisoner on the Western Front. American units arriving in France receive instruction in raiding from French and British officers with years of experience. Units accustomed to pre-war open warfare doctrine must adapt to silent movement, specialized weapons, coordination of assault and withdrawal under extreme confusion. American raiding improves substantially through 1918. The raids of 1918 take place in a context increasingly dominated by offensive operations. German spring offensives draw on years of stormtrooper experience, applying raiding techniques at operational scale. The infiltration tactics achieving dramatic initial success build directly on methods developed in countless small-scale raids. Allied counteroffensives similarly draw on raiding experience. Combined arms techniques in the final months incorporate lessons about infantry-artillery coordination, small unit initiative, and flexible response developed partly through raiding. Men who lead platoons and companies in the 100 Days Offensive have often gained first combat experience in midnight raids. The psychological toll manifests variously. Some men become addicted to the intensity, volunteering repeatedly for operations offering extreme risk and stimulation. Others break after single experiences, unable to face close combat in darkness again. The arbitrary nature of survival weighs heavily. Physical symptoms accumulate over time: sleeplessness, heightened startle responses, persistent anxiety. Night sounds become sources of dread. Anticipation produces nausea, trembling, involuntary bladder release. These are not signs of cowardice, but normal human responses to mortal combat at arm's length in darkness. A British medical officer writes, "The raiders are different from other cases. They do not jump at loud noises, they jump at silence. They cannot bear to be approached from behind. They cannot bear darkness. I believe they have witnessed something worse than ordinary combat. An Australian private recalls, "After my third raid, I stopped sleeping properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. The German I killed with the shovel, he was just a boy, younger than me. I see him still." The darkness is never complete. Flares rise and fall, casting shifting shadows, freezing movement. Stars provide enough light to silhouette a crawling figure. The moon, when present, creates conditions commanders either exploit or avoid. The phases of the moon govern raiding schedules. Commanders study lunar calendars with the attention others give to tide tables. The sound environment is complex. Background noise includes sporadic gunfire, distant artillery, aircraft hum, night birds confused by the unnatural landscape. Against this, raiders must detect specific sounds indicating discovery or danger. The click of a rifle bolt, the creak of a duckboard, the whisper of a command in German. Survival depends on hearing them before being heard. The smell of no man's land is distinctive and terrible. Unburied dead, some months old, create an atmosphere participants describe as physically oppressive. Chemical residues from previous gas attacks mix with explosive odour and the stench of disturbed earth. Approaching enemy trenches means entering the opposing army's olfactory signature. Different food, different tobacco, different sanitation arrangements. German trenches smell of ersatz coffee, black bread, and the particular odour of German-issue soap. British trenches smell of tea, bully beef, and woodbine cigarettes. French trenches smell of wine, garlic, and strong tobacco. These smells become reconnaissance tools. Wounds from raids have characteristics shaped by weapons employed. Grenades produce distinctive fragmentation injuries, multiple small penetrations that might or might not prove immediately fatal. Pistol wounds at close range are often devastating. Blunt trauma from clubs and tools leaves crushed bones and ruptured organs. Edged weapon injuries include deep lacerations and punctures bleeding profusely in darkness. Treatment under raid conditions is rudimentary. Wounded men in no man's land cannot be evacuated until the operation concludes, often not even then if the route is under fire. Men bleed out in shell holes, waiting for help that never comes. The dead of trench raiding often remain unrecovered. Men killed in no man's land might lie for months. Men killed in enemy trenches might be buried by Germans or left where they fell. Uncertainty about missing men's fate adds to the psychological burden on survivors and families at home. British war diaries from divisions on the Somme in late 1916 and 1917 record raids of varying scale, occurring nearly daily in some sectors. Entries are terse. Time of departure, strength of party, objectives assigned, results achieved or not achieved. Casualties recorded with similar brevity. Behind these laconic accounts lie experiences of terror and violence the documentary record can only hint at. Canadian forces develop a particularly aggressive raiding culture. Canadian raids tend toward larger scale and greater violence than other British Empire forces. Results often justify investment, with Canadian raids achieving consistently high prisoner counts and substantial damage to enemy defences. German Stoßtrupp tactics emerge fully formed by 1917. These specialised assault units receive extensive training in close-quarters combat, demolitions and small unit tactics. They are equipped with light machine guns, flamethrowers and specialised grenades. Their techniques point toward warfare that will become dominant in subsequent conflicts. The conclusion of the war leaves a complex legacy. Tactical lessons inform doctrine for subsequent conflicts. Psychological understanding contributes to emerging knowledge about combat stress. Weapons and techniques influence subsequent infantry equipment and training. The human cost remains difficult to calculate. Casualties from thousands of individual operations accumulate to substantial totals, but remain often invisible in larger statistics. Men killed or wounded in raids rarely figure in major battle counts. Their sacrifice occurs in operations producing no headlines and changing no strategic situations. The night trench raid represents one answer to the tactical deadlock of the Western Front, not the only answer, not necessarily the best answer, but an answer emerging organically from conditions confronting armies locked in static warfare. The silence of no man's land at night broken by approaching raiders or sudden trench assault violence, encapsulates something essential about the conflict. In an era of industrial killing at distance, the night raid returned warfare to an older mode, men killing each other face to face in darkness. The men who conducted night raids entered a world where civilization's restraints fell away, and survival depended on killing more efficiently than the enemy. The men who survived carry memories for the rest of their lives. Some speak freely, others maintain silence, unable or unwilling to describe experiences exceeding comprehension of those who have not shared them. Psychological wounds prove as lasting as physical injuries, manifesting in nightmares, flashbacks, and persistent anxiety that medical science of the era can neither explain nor effectively treat. The night trench raid reveals something fundamental about the Great War. The combination of industrial resources and pre-modern violence, mass production and individual terror finds concentrated expression in operations where men blacken their faces and grip clubs to cross a few hundred meters of mud and kill their enemies at arm's length. The raid strips away abstractions of strategy and distances of modern firepower to expose warfare at its most elemental.